Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Matt and Cheryl's Gen Excellent playlist. I'm Matt.
I'm Cheryl.
And our latest additions to the musical year 1983 this week. We're going to try and plug three songs in there. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on one of them. We're going to reserve most of our time for Cheryl's album of the year. Before we get into the songs we're picking this week, been a tough stretch here for Gen X pop cultural icons, hasn't it? We've lost a few.
I'm assuming you're talking about Ozzy.
Well, that's one. That's one big one, obviously.
Yes.
Now, he's not a Gen Xer. He's a boomer, but obviously big in our peer group. I'd say it starts with Crazy Train and his first solo album. I don't know that too many of us as 7th and 8th graders were listening to Black Sabbath.
That was more like an older sibling thing, I think.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Again, that's where I kind of missed out on. I was never into metal as a kid because I didn't have that older brother. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I've really only appreciated a lot of this music later in life.
Yeah.
But he was big. I mean, he was, when I think back to junior high, when kids first started getting into metal, it was AC/DC, it was Ozzy, Def Leppard, and, Rush. I don't know that you would consider them metal, but a lot of these people would have been into the same kind of stuff.
Yes, I do, definitely remember the guys and girls that were into metal. Ozzy was huge. I mean, he was definitely one of the biggest. Is the other person you're referring to Hulk Hogan?
That would be Hulk Hogan. We don't even need to spend a lot of time there. He did record music, though. Again, Hulk Hogan means little to me in my life, but professional wrestling was very popular and meant a lot to a lot of people. And then, on a lesser note, just for me personally, Chuck Mangione.
Yeah.
Feels So Good. The album was the second album I ever owned after Blondie's Parallel Lines. You can decide for yourself which is cooler. But I loved it. Oh, God, I love that music.
Feel So Good. Yeah, when I saw that he had passed away, I couldn't get that song out of my head. It was stuck in my head for days, so it is very catchy.
When I think back to when I first started really listening closely and appreciating music, noticing individual elements in music, not just the song as a whole, but, what's the guitar doing here? Oh, that horn line's interesting. The guitar in that song, wicked guitar solo and Feels So Good. Interesting tone, first of all, but just a wicked, I can't remember the name of the guitarist, but yeah, I had the Feel So Good album and I had the follow-up album to that. There was a hit song on there. I think it was called Give It All You Got or something like that. There was a song that became kind of a theme of the Olympics that year too off that record. But I listened to those a lot as a kid. I really enjoyed those records. So yeah, Chuck Mangione, a goner as well. Anyhow, as we move on from paying tribute to the dead, death does loom over your album of the year, doesn't it? Stuart Adamson in Big Country died a sad early death.
And, actually, it kind of bums me out even more that when you search for Big Country or you try to you look for stuff online, that's the first thing that comes up. And you see all these the tragic death of Stuart Adamson. It just kind of bummed me out that seemed to overshadow anything that you could find about their music, about him. I mean, the band had so many albums. They recorded for years. They were still together, when he passed away. And I think it was in 2000. What year was that? 2001?
Yeah, 2001.
Yeah. His legacy really is not what it should be, I feel, because they're basically kind of seen as a one-hit wonder in America. And they did have a big following, a core fan base that followed them through all the decades. But yeah, I was just kind of like, oh, that's disappointing when all I could see was the tragedy.
Yep. Most people just know the one song, and it's a great song. It's one everybody should know. In a Big Country off their debut album, The Crossing. Well, I'll let you take over, but I think people should, if they're interested in learning more about Big Country, you should go backwards as well, because he was in a really cool band before that called Skids, or I've seen it. Skids or The Skids.
On the albums, it just says Skids.
Yeah.
So I was going to be really careful that I just called them Skids, because I know you don't like to stray from what the actual name is.
Yeah.
But people do refer to them as The Skids. But yeah, Stuart was in a band called Skids, and they're Scottish. And, that's a really important thing for this band, because they obviously have a sound to them that is in the Celtic vein, but their big kind of gimmick really is sort of what it became, was the bagpipe sound that the guitar emulated in their hit songs, especially in A Big Country and Fields of Fire, which were the two that were hits in America. So anyway, yeah, Stewart was in Skids. They had a song called Into the Valley that was actually a top 10 hit in the UK. And I didn't realize that he's not the lead singer in that band.
Yeah.
He's the lead guitarist, which he is a great guitarist, actually. And, Big Country went on to have that dual guitar sound that is really cool and very reminiscent of like Thin Lizzy and bands like that. But in Skids, he was just the guitarist. He was the lead guitarist. And it's a little disappointing, actually, that he's not the singer, because I don't really care for the singer in that band. And I think that Stewart's voice is much better.
I am in complete agreement with you there. I think the band is great, but they're a little let down by the vocals.
Yeah. So I'm not sure why, that's the way it came about, but he recorded 3 albums with the band. They continued on after he left, but they recorded 3 albums with Stewart, and then he left, and he ended up getting together. Well, Bruce Watson, who's the other guitarist, was actually someone that he just knew as a friend, and he asked him, to start a band with him. And initially, they actually had a different rhythm section. They were a 5-piece at that time. They actually supported Alice Cooper in 1982 for a couple shows.
That's that bad pairing.
Yes.
Pairing.
Well, and it didn't go well for them either. The audience was definitely not on board. And so that was a very short stint they had with that tour.
And that was during the height of Alice Cooper's excess too, right?
It was. Yeah, it was in 1982. That time actually was going more in the new wave vein, and was like Clones was a hit for him. So, I mean, in that sense, it's not so out of the question that Big Country might fit in with that, but it just didn't work for his audience. So then they figured that they needed to do some revamping, and that's when they brought in Mark Brzezicki and Tony Butler, Mark Brzezicki on drums, Tony Butler on bass.
Ringers.
Yeah, but actually, they were just kind of starting out. They had formed this rhythm section that they called themselves Rhythm for Hire.
I love that.
Yeah. And so they were, their intention was that they were going to be session musicians that would hire themselves out. And
I heard one great appellation. I don't know if they referred to themselves as this or if it was a journalist, but the Sly and Robbie of Soho. I thought that was clever.
They are a great rhythm section. They really are. And Mark Brzezicki, oh my God, I've realized now, listening closely to this album, like really, really delving deep. I mean, it's been...
Drummer talking now.
Yes, I'm sorry. I need to put my drummer hat on, but it is one of the top 5 drum albums, I think, for me of all time.
Ooh.
And we're not talking flashy Neil Peart drums. We're not talking like crazy Keith Moon drums. We're talking more in the vein of Stewart Copeland and, these rhythm keepers that have flourishes that are more subtle, uses a lot of cymbals and lots of tom work. What it comes down to really is more about rhythms, like using really cool rhythms that don't stand out so much that a lot of people would even really notice unless you're listening closely to it. So anyway, once Mark and Tony came on board, they originally were in a band with Simon Townsend, Pete Townsend's brother, called On the Air. They had a couple, I think 3 albums out. They started in 1980. They're okay. Nothing really that great. I've listened to their stuff and it's not bad, but it's never really been anything that interesting to me.
Is it better than Mike McGear?
Mike McGear's album is cool. You're talking about Paul McCartney's brother. That album is really cool, actually. No, it's not better than that. So On the Air actually was touring with Skids, and that's how they met Stewart. And since they were in a band with Simon Townsend, that's also how they got connected with Pete. Mark is on Empty Glass. He plays on the song Little's Enough, and Tony plays on the whole album. And they both play on Chinese Eyes. Both play on the whole album of Chinese Eyes, which those are 2 of my favorite albums. And a lot of the reason why I love those, especially Chinese Eyes, is because of the rhythm section. And this is where I started wanting to know about Big Country because, you're looking at the album jacket and you're like, who's in this band? And you see these names and then you start delving further and who are these guys? So I discover they are in Big Country. And, I knew the song In a Big Country from The Day and Fields of Fire. That's kind of what got me starting to get into this album. So they were part of On the Air. Then they recorded Pete's solo albums. And that's all Mark really did before he joined Big Country. But Tony actually played on Back in the Chain Gang and My City Was Gone, the recordings that the Pretenders did before, the singles, because that was in 1982. They released that single before the album came out in 84. So Back in the Chain Gang, and the flip side was My City Was Gone. Tony plays on that. And he actually was asked to join the Pretenders at that time, but he said no because he was just starting to kind of hook up with Big Country then, and he was still doing other session work. But other than that, that was pretty much all they had done at that time as Rhythm for Hire. Tony and Mark came in Big Country, and the first song that they played on was Harvest Home, which was their first single that was released in 82. And then they were asked to join the band full time. So there's kind of this subgenre from this era called big music.
Yes.
And they definitely fall into that category. And the other bands that are part of that, U2 would be the biggest one. They have a lot in common with U2, not only the fact that they're part of this big music, but they also were both produced by Steve Lillywhite. The other bands, I would say, like The Alarm, Simple Minds.
Another Lillywhite production, Sparkle in the Rain, also 1983. Yeah.
Yeah. The Waterboys.
Yep. Echoing the Bunny Men a little bit.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think Ultravox maybe a little, like in this era and going forward. Just by the name Big Music, you can kind of get a sense of what that means. And it's this, anthemic,
Yep.
Generally has a message.
Yep. Widescreen production, big anthems, rousing songs.
Yes.
Something to inspire and uplift.
Exactly. And this album falls right in the middle of all of that.
It leads you to wonder, too, the fact that Stewart didn't sing lead in Skids, even though it really was his band.
Yeah.
He was really the leader of that band, but he gave up the lead vocals to Richard Jobson, who was like 17, I think, when they started. Wasn't real comfortable with his own voice, I guess. I don't know why.
Which seems really strange to me because he has one of the most confident vocals, which is where that big music moniker comes from too, where it's in the vocals. Like so much of it is in the vocals because it's passionate and strong, and that message that comes across so intensely because of the vocals. So I don't really understand that either.
Well, plus he's doing some pretty technical lead guitar work in that band too, especially on stage. Maybe that's a little much.
But he does quite a lot of technical guitar work in Big Country too. And that's one of the things I think when you watch them live, especially from 83, 84.
Best way to experience Big Country, definitely.
Yes. There's a really good live performance from 84.
Yes. And I would say best way to experience Skids too. They were awesome live.
Yeah, they were really good live too. But watching Big Country live, you really get a sense of the dual guitars and how both guitars are really working. Because I always kind of assumed that it was Bruce Watson doing a lot of the guitar work, but actually Stewart is doing just as much of the complicated guitar as he is, and they really complement each other and work off of each other.
Yeah. Thin Lizzy style. I mean, it's
Thin Lizzy style.
There's harmonic guitars and there's unison guitar, just like Thin Lizzy.
Mm-hmm. I think that's one of those things that kind of gets overlooked on this album. I really think that this album is one of those that it's easy just to think of them as a one-hit wonder because In a Big Country was a really big single. It was on MTV all the time. It had a goofy video, and they were using these guitar effects that sound like bagpipes, and it's very forward in this song. And so I think that kind of added to the gimmickiness of them in a way. They actually had 4 singles from this album, but the 2 that made an impact in America were In a Big Country and Fields of Fire. And Fields of Fire also has that bagpipe guitar sound to it. In fact, there's even a bagpiper in the video playing bagpipes during that part as if it were a bagpipe.
Now, it's a specific piece of gear that they used to get that guitar tone that kind of reminded of bagpipes. And I think when people realized they're from Scotland, they saw the plaid attire.
Yeah, the tartan kilt.
And then heard the guitars sound. People just fell for that.
Yeah.
but it's the MXR Pitch Transposer 129 effect pedal, which lifts the guitar tones up an octave, makes it really high and trebly and wavery. And that's how they got this. Now, they're also known for using EBOs. That's not really the bagpipe sound with the EBO. That's getting more of a kind of a string sound out of the guitar.
There's two songs especially that use it. One is The Storm, and
Yes.
it makes this kind of like eerie sounding.
Yeah, very atmospheric.
Yes, which is actually really cool. I like that.
Yeah.
I like it a lot, and I think it adds a lot to the sound, and it also does make it more of a bigger sound. But it's really interesting. I think In a Big Country has lasted. You still hear that song, you see the video.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But there's so much more going on in this album that to be fully appreciated, you really need to listen to it on headphones. I've been very annoyed and distraught by the production on this album, the original production. And there was a remaster that came out, I think it was in like 2012. And for some reason, I didn't really think that they had fixed a lot of things or made it better.
Is this the deluxe edition, the green cover?
This is the deluxe edition, has a green cover. The original has a blue cover. And actually, I've been listening to that one exclusively now and realize that especially on headphones, that mix actually does pretty much fix everything that was wrong with the original. And the biggest issue I had with the original was the vocals were mixed really far back and it had a very muddled sound to it.
I will say this about In a Big Country, and we are putting that song, because both Cheryl and I love that song from 1983, so that's our playlist song nomination. So this is one of our rare albums of the year where we're actually putting a song off it on the playlist too. Seek out the 7-inch version of that over the album version. I think it's much, I'm a little, I don't think a great edit has been made of that song yet. It's almost like you want to go in and make your own, because the album version just seems a little clunky to me, particularly the opening.
See, I love the opening because it's all about the drums.
Yeah, but it just feels like there's kind of awkward editing going on in there. It isn't very smooth.
Yes, I do agree. And that you can really notice on headphones. It does feel like there is editing in there, in the drums particularly. I think they could have made that much smoother.
It feels like just kind of a sloppy 12-inch mix of some kind.
Yeah, it does feel a little disjointed.
But the 7-inch version isn't perfect either, but it sounds a lot better. It's a lot punchier and clearer, and it removes that awkward opening. It just gets right to the point. But then again, they cut a lot out, and it's really repetitive, even though it's shorter. So it's not perfect either, but it sounds more powerful. It just comes through better through the speakers.
And I think In a Big Country, especially when you're talking about big music, I mean, it starts out with all those tom hits and then Stewart yelling, "Shot!"
Yeah.
And so you're like, something big is going to happen. And then the Come Up Screamin'. They have a live DVD called Come Up Screamin'. It just has kind of like these anthemic catchphrases, and there's lines in it sung with just such conviction and passion.
But it's also dark and tormented. In light of his passing, it's kind of powerful to go back and there's a lot of melancholy. There's a lot of torment in those lyrics. And you kind of wonder if there's some trauma from childhood going on there or whatever it was. But he was obviously a very tormented man.
Yeah. And I think that that's probably where you get so much emotion and passion behind his vocals and his lyrics. It's a pretty deep album.
Yeah.
Both musically and lyrically. And that's why I think that when you take them just at face value, you just kind of see them as an 80s one-hit wonder band. But if you really listen to this album, there's so much going on. Every song, there's so much going on with both the guitars doing often very intricate parts using different technology. Although I will say no synths. There's no synths on this album. Any sound that you hear is coming from the guitars.
But apparently they were messing around with synthesizers. It took them a while to find their footing. You talked about the origins of the band. The band originated organically, but the band, as it became a recording unit, was quite manufactured. When you look at Butler and Brzezinski coming in as a ready-made rhythm section.
Rhythm for hire, yeah.
Yeah. And, when it was just Stuart Adamson and Bruce Watson, they were enraptured by the technology of the day, just like a lot of people were. And they were listening to a lot of Human League and electronic music at the turn of the 80s, and they were messing about with synthesizers. But I think Stewart just kind of came to an idea about this band that he wanted it to be earthier And
Yes.
there was a great article in Classic Rock Magazine about the band. I think he thought of music as something working class people did. You'd sit down and someone would have a guitar, someone would have a fiddle, and you just,
Hmm.
after a hard week, letting off steam and being creative. And he's like, well, nobody was playing bloody synthesizers, when they got together.
More like traditional Scottish music,
Right.
like in the pub.
There's
Hmm.
definitely a Celtic feel to the melodies. And then you add in the guitars that sound like bagpipes. Even if the lyrical themes are dark and depressing, the music is just rousing and uplifting and
Yeah.
exciting.
Well, and I don't really think of it as depressing. It can be dark at times, but it is very organic. That's a perfect word to describe it. It has an uplifting feeling to me, even though it's coming from a dark, kind of dank place. Like you think of the video when they're in the Scottish castle, like moss growing on a castle, or like that's how this album feels to me.
Their next album would be pretty depressing.
To be honest, I've listened to other albums of theirs, but I've never connected with any of them.
No,
I don't
no.
have any connection to any other album. And I've tried to keep this album sort of in a bubble for me, where, in fact, even listening to the deluxe version, I don't even want to listen to the other tracks. I only want to listen to the songs that are on the original album. And I listen to it all the way through. And that's one of the reasons why it's my album of the year, too, is it is a full album statement to me. That's how I enjoy it. Listening to the entire album. I don't want any extra tracks, and I don't want to listen to any other songs of theirs.
What's your favorite album track? I really like Chance. That's a beautiful song.
I love Chance. I love Inwards.
Yep.
1,000 Stars. I think I actually really love every song on this album except Lost Patrol and Close Action are my two least favorite songs, but I still like them. Horror Man is like an epic, beautiful at times.
Yeah.
It's like a 7-minute song and it doesn't even have vocals until after 2 minutes, I think.
That's starting to tread into some prog territory there.
A little bit, although you don't have the keyboards like I think of in
Yeah.
Prague, but it's so beautiful and it just like builds. And that's one of the songs where you can really hear the bass. It's got this deep kind of Dungeness sounding bass to it. It's got these pretty like chimey guitars. It goes on for like 2 minutes before the vocals even come in. And then it changes tempo at like 4.5 minutes or so. It totally changes tempo and it sounds like a completely different song, like almost like a Celtic jig. And that's the song that sounds the most U2-ish to me. So many of the songs on this album either have like an epic intro or an epic outro, where they just go on at the end and play for like a minute with no vocals, which they can do because they are great musicians.
Yeah.
The musicianship on this album is just incredible to me. And I think that Mark Brzezicki's drumming is just so top tier, and I just think that they're all really incredible musicians. I love Stewart's voice. Every time I listen to it, I like it even more. They continued Big Country for a long time, and Brzezicki and Butler went on to do a lot of different sessions. Mark Brzezicki, he plays on Fish from Marillion's first solo album, and another one that came out in 2004 that are like two of my favorite Fish albums, and I didn't even realize he was on those. He actually joined Ultravox in 1986, played with them for a while. Oh, he was on the Cult Love album, also one of my favorite albums from the 80s. So, I mean, he, went on to have quite a career, and same with Tony Butler. And actually, I love watching them live too, because Tony Butler is one of the happiest musicians you've ever seen playing live. The only other person I can think of that probably smiles more than him is Billy Zoom from X, who always has a perma smile. But he's always like dancing around, and they're a very lively band to watch.
Yep, dynamic on stage. They were really good live band.
They just look like they really are enjoying themselves while they're playing. But for some reason, they were just never able to capture what they did on this debut album. They did have a following. They had a very loyal core audience, and they put out many albums. But for me, this is the one.
Yep. Sadly, in America, they would just be, as you mentioned, that Scottish band with the bagpipe guitars. And then once was enough for the USA listeners.
Yeah,
apparently.
people are like, okay, I've heard that. I don't need to hear the bagpipe guitars anymore. But there's only like maybe 3 or 4 songs that kind of have that bagpipe guitar. And the 2 singles in America were by far the ones that, it stands out in the most. And actually, Fields of Fire, which I didn't realize until I really started listening to the album how much I like that song. That is a very, very cool song. It has lots of really interesting parts to it. But you remember the song that Slade had?
Oh, sure. Run Away.
Run
Yeah.
Away. It
See
sounds
the
just like Fields of
chameleon
Fire.
lying there in this. Yes, it does.
It sounds just like Fields of Fire. And actually, that song is based on a Scottish jig taken directly from that. And I saw the video for Run Away, and I was like, oh, I forgot about this song. This is a cool song. And I was like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
this sounds just like Big Country. And this came out a year later, and they were like ripping off Big Country. But when you listen to that song, you can really hear the Scottish jig. And that does come across in Fields of Fire, too. But anyway, just so much more there beyond just their singles. I hope that more people will explore this album because I think that people would be pleasantly surprised.
I would agree. So, In a Big Country is a song that both Cheryl and I put forward for our playlist for 1983, and the album The Crossing, Cheryl's favorite album from that year. I'm pretty sure what mine is going to be, but there's been a couple of contenders creeping up, so they're going to have a final shootout before I make a decision. So before we talk about the other banded song that we're going to spend the majority of our time, just real briefly, we've already talked a lot about Duran Duran, so we're going to spend too much time on them here. But Is There Something I Should Know was a standalone single in 1983, and my favorite Duran Duran song. So I'm putting that on the playlist for 1983. It's kind of the peak of Duran Duran for me. After that, I kind of got off the train. I just thought the singles off Seven the Ragged Tiger just weren't that good. You know, the material just wasn't that good anymore. And they would still have good songs down the road. Ordinary World, obviously, several years later is a great single. But Is There Something I Should Know? It's just it's a very crowded mix. There's a ton going on in that song, and they're transitioning to new producers, the guys who would do Seven of the Ragged Tiger. But Duran Duran, it's kind of complicated when you look at all the different versions of the
Yes. Oh my
songs.
gosh, they have so many
7-inch,
mixes.
12-inch, US versions, UK versions. They didn't become big in America until their second album, Rio. So they already had the self-titled album out before that, which was big in England, but didn't get promoted here. So once this single came out, the record company just tacked it on to the first album and re-released it. And when you listen to that album, it's jarring when that song comes up because
Yes.
it sounds totally different. It's like way louder than everything else on the album.
Way more
Yeah,
trebly and
right.
bright, so bright, and like, whoa, what just happened? Yeah.
It is a great song, though. And as the biggest band of this era, this biggest singles band of this era, it's my favorite song. So we're putting it on the playlist.
It was their first UK number one, too.
Oh, UK number one. Oh, so really? I didn't
Yep.
realize they hadn't had a UK number one hit yet. You know, Simon Le Bon's lyrics kind of run hot and cold for me.
Yeah.
I think of them like Chris Stein and Debbie Harry's Blondie lyrics, where they can be really clever one moment and then really stupid the next.
Yeah.
But I think this is some of the better lyrics on their singles on this song, particularly the line about fiery demons.
Mhm.
When you walk through that door, you're about as easy as a nuclear war. Love that. That's
Yeah.
very clever. So, any more Duran Duran songs? Just looking ahead, anything you think you would put forward for the playlist, or
Well,
are you?
personally, I love the Reflex, but I'm not going to put it. I'm not going to put it on the playlist.
That was the single where it's like, yeah, no, don't like it.
But I like it with the video. You know, there's a lot of music from this era where I really, really connected to the video in my mind more than just listening to the song. So that's part of why that one really stands out more in my mind. And that was actually the height of Duran Duran mania for me, was 1984.
Yeah, same for a lot of young ladies.
Yeah. So that's why I loved watching, the video, because it was a live. Well, it was like the song played over a live performance. But no, I'm not going to be adding any more Duran Duran.
All right, now the last song we're going to talk about. This has been fascinating for me to see Cheryl's trip that she went on here, because I've always liked this song, and then we started compiling our first list, getting ready for 1983. I had it on there, and then going back and revisiting it, I like it a lot more. And every time I listen to it, I like it more. Cheryl, safe to say you were pretty meh on this band and this song when we first broached this, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
And then Cheryl goes off down the rabbit hole and becomes obsessed with it, which I love. It's great. Now, I have not gone down the rabbit hole yet. I've only just gone back and listened to a little bit of the band's earlier work. But the band is the Tubes, out of San Francisco by way of Phoenix, Arizona. And the song is She's a Beauty. This was their second album produced by David Foster. And in my opinion, the pinnacle of his production work was with this band. For the most part, I don't like a lot of the stuff he's been involved with over the years. Has sold a gajillion records.
He knows how to make hits.
Yes, he does. But he's also responsible, or not solely responsible, but he was definitely on the cutting edge of a lot of the 80s production sounds, the worst aspects of 80s production in
Yes.
popular music that I do not like. But here he's working with a band that's a genuine rock band that's delivering. He would go on to work with mainly, I mean, now he's just total middle of the road acts, you know.
Mhm.
But this band can kick some ass. For me, this is just a great cutting edge, modern 1983 AOR rock production. Sounds amazing. The album is called Outside In from 1983. Now, he produced their previous record called The Completion Backward Principle in 1981, which I think is a much better album. I really like that album a lot. I don't care for the Outside In album so much outside of this one song, which I think is great. The rest of the album, just kind of a little too generic, mainstream rock sounding for me. A lot more interesting good things going on in the Completion Backward Principle, including, and we're going to talk more about power ballads here in one of our upcoming episodes, but one of the absolute greatest epic power ballads of the era. And I'm strongly considering going back and re-reviewing 19. We've talked about this several times. We've left the door open. We could always go back and make changes to our previous songs and playlists.
Yeah.
We haven't done it yet. We will at some point. But the Completion Backward Principle, it's kind of a transitory album going from their weirder, more offbeat, underground early albums and transitioning to a more mainstream sound with David Foster, who would go on to produce big hits for Chicago and Peter Cetera and many, many others later on down the road. But there's still enough weirdness on the Completion Backward Principle to make it a really interesting listen, despite some of the more mainstream production tendencies on it. But Don't Want to Wait Anymore is the ballad, and it is killer. I mean, it is epic, so great, over the top for sure, but just I don't like to use the words guilty pleasure so much, but I just love that song. Love it.
I don't know if it really strays too far into guilty pleasure, but I think it's definitely getting into where the sound that David Foster was starting to have with Chicago.
Yes.
The big ballad, the big, heartfelt.
But it's different though, because it still has a lot of really cool chord changes in it. So it's not just a slick by numbers ballad.
No,
it's
it isn't.
very interesting. Listen, beautiful harmonies, great chord changes.
And that song you might not even know is The Tubes because Bill Spooner sings lead. So Fee's not even singing lead on that song. So it does not sound like them, even though it really doesn't sound like anything they've done anyway, but having a different lead singer too.
Yeah, Fee Waybill, the lead singer. So most of the band members moved from Phoenix to San Francisco, kind of the late 60s, turn of the 70s. Just because that's, better chance of being heard and getting signed.
Well, Prairie Prince got a scholarship to San Francisco Art Institute. And
Prairie
so
Prince, their outstanding drummer. Yeah.
I love that. I mean, this is another thing that is like turned me on so huge to the Tubes is Prairie Prince. He's now in my top 10 drummers of all time. I love him.
Yeah, he's a great drummer. But there's plenty of musicianship in this band. Now, they were really more known for their stage show than their records. Their first album came out in 1975, and there was a minor hit, White Punks on Dope, off that record. And then really nothing for the next 10 years, single-wise, that troubled the charts. And their albums didn't sell much. They were on A&M Records, which was kind of a square label, although they had some unusual signings. But A&M really known more for the Carpenters and Herb Alpert's solo albums and the Tijuana Brass, a lot of middle-of-the-road music.
Yeah.
But they also had Humble Pie, and they signed the Dickies, so they were one of the first major labels to sign a punk band. They always had a few offbeat acts, but they were mainly kind of middle-of-the-road mainstream label. And by all accounts, the label people loved these guys. They thought they were super creative and interesting. They liked their albums. Their stage show was quite boundary-pushing.
Yeah.
For the time, and just wild. It was more like a cabaret show than a rock and roll concert, with a lot of costumes and acting out little scenarios, a lot of sex, a lot of non-mainstream sexual things going on in their stage act.
And Fee Waybill was a theater guy, so
Yes.
he definitely brought the theatrics in. There was different characters he played, and
Yep.
in White Pucks on Dope, he had a character called Quaalude, who I swear, did Dee Snider get his look from Quaalude?
Possibly.
He's got like the makeup that looks just like Dee Snider, the big hair, obviously a wig. But Fee Waybill must be like 6'5".
Yeah, he's huge.
Very tall.
Yeah.
Quaalude is wearing like 6-inch platform boots. He must be 7 feet tall when he's Quaalude. Like he's this huge presence that comes out and he's dressed up all like this glam, barely clothed.
I'd never noticed what a tall guy he was until I looked up his appearances on David Letterman, and Letterman is a tall man.
Yeah.
And Fee comes out and just towers over Dave.
Yeah, so you have to figure that Quaalude must be like 7 feet tall.
Yeah, right. What did he say? He like used soup cans to create these. I mean, early on they were on a skimpy budget for their stage act, and he said he like emptied out industrial sized tomato soup cans.
To make his platform.
They would kind of crush as the show went on. He'd get lower and lower. But yeah, they were wild and constantly pushing boundaries. Their music had weird topics. But you've gone down that road and you have found a wealth of interesting things to discover.
I can't tell you how shocked I was when I started going down this and how impressed and how much I love this band. Because first of all, Frank Zappa asked, does humor belong in music? And my answer was always no. But I have completely changed my tune with the Tubes. And part of that, I mean, that would kind of go along with Frank Zappa too. But part of this is because they are amazing musicians. They are a kick-ass band. They are so good. And I kind of think of them as like a mix between 10cc meets Utopia, Todd Rundgren's Utopia, and Zappa. They have a lot of Zappa influence, especially like in the vocals, but they are incredible musicians. And their first album, The Tubes, I think is a masterpiece. I really do. I mean, White Punks on Dope is the one song from that album that people would know, but that song really does not do the album justice. It's definitely the most punk they ever sounded. And it's a character. I mean, they're creating that as a character.
And this is 75 before the punk revolution.
Before
so this is
punk. I mean, actually, it sounds a lot like Richard Hell, Blank Generation. It's a very similar song structure. It's definitely the most punk thing they did, but it's more like Spinal Tap does punk, which Spinal Tap, actually, they're good musicians and their songs are pretty good. It's like that, where it's a parody, but it's still a good song. Just put on the first song from this album. I know you, Matt, will be kind of blown away by this because it's epic. It has prog leanings in the way that like Todd Rundgren's Utopia does, or like ELO. I was just instantly like, what is this? And the whole album goes on like that. Fee's vocals sound so much different in these early albums. Sometimes he sounds like, I don't know the lead singer's name, but the Doobie Brothers, like a mix of the Doobie Brothers and Frank Zappa, if you can imagine that.
Depends on which Doobie song. You're not talking about Mike McDonald.
No, not Michael McDonald, the original guy, the original, like China Grove.
Tom Johnston would be.
Okay, Tom Johnston, Doobie Brothers. Al Kooper produced their first album.
He's like the Zelig of rock and roll, Al Kooper. He's just there at all these
like playing organ on Rolling Stone.
Right.
Yes.
He's the guy who signed and produced the first Leonard Skinner records. He had the Super Session album with Mike Bloomfield and Stephen Stills, and they basically stole the idea from Moby Grape, who had the Grape Jam record on the Wow Grape Jam double in @68. And Al Kooper and Mike Bloomfield were sitting in with those guys jamming. Like, oh, this is a good idea. Why don't we put on our own jam record?
Yeah. Well, he was kind of always at the right place at the right time kind of guy. And they stuck him with the Tubes. So some of the stuff actually has a feel to like Blood, Sweat, and Tears, which Al Kooper was an original member of that band. The song, What Do You Want From Life? It has strings, it has horns, it's got groovy guitars, weird synth solos that sound like Stevie Wonder. And at the end, it has this hilarious like barrage of 70s. It's like a time capsule. Like, do you want this? And they start rattling off all these things. My favorite part, an Indian guru to show you the inner light, like a jab at the Beatles.
Yeah.
And so just that song in itself is so epic. The whole album is really. And they're doing all this live too. They're doing it live with visuals, with
Choreography, crazy
choreography.
costumes.
And this is the beginning, so they hadn't quite started bringing in as much yet. And they will eventually bring on Kenny Ortega as their choreographer, who later on went to like work with Michael Jackson and did the High School Musical
Yes.
series. And
So he basically went on to be at the top of the craft. Yes, right.
huge. And he
Yes.
started with the Tubes.
Yeah.
And I really thought that they would be one of those bands too that you have to see them live to really appreciate them. But no, it totally translates on album too.
Well, and then their last record before their kind of mainstream transition, they worked with Todd Rundgren in the producer's chair and recorded a concept album called Remote Control about television, which is really quite interesting.
I also love this album. And this is the only album I had ever listened to before this last couple weeks was Remote Control.
Prompted to listen because of Rundgren being involved, I'm sure.
Because it's produced by Todd Rundgren. And the first time I heard this album, I was like, this is the best Utopia album Utopia never made. I mean, Todd Rundgren has a very heavy hand when he produces, and you definitely feel it on this album. But I love this album. You know, Todd had just come off Bad Out of Hell before this. So he's coming from that bombastic sound and that, you know, concept kind of
theatrical rock.
Exactly. Remote Control actually was based on the book Being There, which later became a movie not long after that with Peter Sellers.
One of my favorite movies.
Me too. I really like this album a lot too because it sounds more like Utopia. It has a lot of synths. Mike Cotton, I think is his name, plays synths. And then they also have a keyboardist too who plays like piano and keyboards.
Yep. Vince Welnick, who went on to play with the Dead.
It's a 6-piece band, so there's a lot going on there. 2 guitarists.
Bill Spooner is the lead guitarist.
Mm-hmm. And then Roger Steen is the other guitarist. He's great. He really is. And they all are. They are incredible musicians, which I think is why they can pull off all this wacky, crazy stuff that they're doing. Otherwise, it would get tiring. You know, it would get just like over the top and just too much. And before they get to Remote Control, I just have to mention this too. So I've listened to all their albums now several times, and their third album, it's called Now. It came out in 1977, which is very strange. It's all over the place. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I still haven't formulated my opinion fully on this album, but I will say that it's interesting enough that I want to go back and listen to it more and really like understand it. It's like every song is a total different genre. You know, it's one of those kind of albums. And then about halfway through a song comes out, I'm like, this sounds exactly like Captain Beefheart. And then I realized this is Captain Beefheart. They did a cover of My Head Is My Only House When It Rains, a song from Clear Spot that came out in like mid 73.
72, 73. I can't remember. Clear Spot, Spotlight Kid. I can't remember which was 72, which was 73.
Well, and those came out on a twofer and on CD too, so I always get them kind of confused.
Right.
But I mean, probably my favorite Captain Beefheart song. I love this song. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe they're covering this. And it is a really cool cover. It does the song justice. That alone was just like, okay, I love this band. And then I came to find out that Captain Beefheart actually plays on this album too. He plays saxophone on one of the songs. Suffice
it to say that you are less enthused with the David Foster era of the Tubes. I know I like Completion Backward Principle a lot more than you do. I think we're both a little chilly on the Outside In album, but
I think of the two albums, I'd definitely say the Complete Backward Principle is better of the two.
I still think they're doing a lot of interesting stuff on that record, less so on Outside In, but She's a Beauty. They just nail this single. And honestly, it's not really the Tubes. It's part of the Tubes. But here come the Toto guys again. They're like
a virus.
Like their tentacles are just getting into everything.
Yes.
In this time period, and they seem to do no wrong. Every other hit, it seems, in 82 and 83, you've got at least one guy from Toto involved. This time it's Steve Lukather, their outstanding guitarist. And you go back to Completion Backward Principle, they'd already set the template here with the Talk to You Later single. Great single.
Yeah, which was a hit for them.
Yes, was a minor hit, not as big as She's a Beauty, but definitely set the template for what was to come. Again, that's pretty much his song. He's got a cool guitar solo in it. He rips off a killer solo in She's a Beauty as well. But really, the hook is the intro with this song. It grabs you by the neck instantly with that sequence synth pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And then that guitar riff.
Yeah.
classic riff. That's all Luke,
Yeah.
and he plays all the guitars on this. Fee Waybill and Foster had a simpatico relationship. The rest of the band, a little less enthused about the direction they were heading, the more mainstream sound they were achieving in the studio. But this song got them paid. It got into the top 10 in Billboard. It got heavy rotation on MTV. And it's just a killer AOR song from that era, introducing more of the synthesizer technology, hearing more and more keyboards on hard rock songs during this era. And that synth open is just killer. And it's not just the repeating sequence pattern, but there's that distorted stab that just puts it over the top. And then the guitar riff comes in. The song's origin's kind of funny. Fee Waybill, for all of their offbeat tendencies, he was kind of still this innocent suburban kid from Scottsdale, Arizona, living in San Francisco and walking through the Tenderloin and seeing all these sex joints and peep shows. And his curiosity finally got the best of him. He sees a booth with a sign, pay $1, see, talk to a naked girl. And he goes in there, and just like, the innocent young guy, at the strip club for the first time, wanting to talk to the real girl and learn. He's trying to have
I don't think it's talk to a naked girl. I think it's see a naked girl. And he thought, talk to her, trying to get her to join our band. She can do more than this. She has more
you're
of a
beautiful.
future.
You could be doing this. And she's like, okay, next.
Yeah.
So the song is kind of about that experience. And to hear Fee Waybill is just such a funny guy. I mean, he's just got this detached, ironic view of everything, this laid-back personality, and reading and interviews and seeing him on Letterman, he's just very entertaining.
Mm-hmm. Letterman had him back like 6 months later.
Yeah, well, he was a recurring guest there for a while. So that's the origin of the song. I will give credit to David Foster and the Tubes for letting them step in. The original lyric was, "You can talk to a naked girl. She's everything you do." And he said, change it to pretty girl. It scans better. It sounds better. It was the right decision.
Yeah.
But the rest of the band was leery of the direction they were heading, and rightfully so, because they were such an interesting group. And now they're getting smoothed out and mainstreamed. The album, it sounds great. I mean, production-wise, it's top tier. Everything's crystal clear and detailed, but the songs are just not that interesting. They're basically generic, kind of R&B flavored mainstream rock. The songs on Completion Backward Principle still were quirky and interesting, had cool chord changes and stuff. They're moving more in an R&B direction here, and that's a lot of the stuff that Foster would produce. I say this is the pinnacle of his production work because there's still bite to it, but a lot of his 80s productions, it's just the worst aspects of that era for me. It's just loud and in your face and just clangorous and not to my taste. But this is a great single, and that's why I picked it.
Well, when you talk about the band not liking the direction, a big piece of that, too, is on the Complete Backward Principle, David Foster had a pretty heavy hand, but they were still doing everything. It was still the Tubes. But then he brought in Lukather for Talk to You Later, and Luke and Foster and Fee recorded the song, brought in Prairie to do the drums. The song was done. The band comes in. They're like, we've got the single. It's done. Okay, well, I guess it's done. They did the same thing on Outside Inside. Brought Luke in to do She's a Beauty. He co-wrote the song, with Foster and Fee, and they record the entire thing. Band comes in. They're like, okay, we've got the single. Here it is. And, the band was like, wait a minute, what's happening here? Not only are we moving into this more mainstream direction, but you're not even using us on the recordings. And so it really rubbed them the wrong way. And this band has been the core 6-piece this entire time. Now all of a sudden they're bringing in ringers, the session guys, and Fee was definitely starstruck. Like he wanted to be a star. He wanted to be in Hollywood. He wanted to be an actor. Once he started getting the taste of fame, he's like, this is where it's at. This is what I want. And there was a division in the band at that point.
They were no longer an A&M at this point. There was the label switch. They went to Capitol, and Capitol signed them under the pretext that we're going to make you have hit singles. So there needs to be a change in direction here.
And we can drop you at any moment if you don't.
Right. So that was the understanding going into that new deal at Capitol. And that's kind of what precipitated the change in their sound. And, Fee wanted to make money. I mean, they weren't making any money. They weren't making any money for the label. They weren't shifting records. They were a draw on stage, certainly. Their reputation as a can't miss live show when they came to your town,
Yeah.
but they weren't selling any albums. So that was the idea of Foster, and Foster, this is really the beginning of his production career. Now, he produced a couple of records in the late 70s. He produced an Alice Cooper album in 78, one of his first productions, but he kind of made his bones on Earth, Wind, and Fire's 1979 record and was very, very instrumental in their big ballad hit After the Love Is Gone.
And you can hear that in these two Tubes albums too. That's where that R&B feel, I think, is coming from, that same kind of sound that he was getting with Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Yeah, and it's not long after that he gets the production job on the Completion Backward Principle. These are among the first records that he produced, so he's still getting going here. And to his credit,
he was part of the whole session, LA session guys with Lukather and the Toto guys, and he was keyboards, piano. He was doing sessions as a keyboardist up until then. Yeah.
He was in a band called Skylark. He's a Canadian, and they came out of Canada, had a hit in the United States that he played keyboards on.
And he was in Airplay with Jay Graydon.
Yeah. Then got involved in sessions, and he's on a million sessions. He was very busy as a session musician, and then transitioned to the production. And I will give him credit for this. In a lot of ways, he's similar to Mutt Lange. They're perfectionists, and you will work your ass off in the studio to get the right take. If it takes 100 tries, that's what it takes to get the perfect take. And I don't think anybody is going to put Fee Waybill up as one of the great vocalists in music history, but he got him some really good vocal takes out of Fee on those hit singles, Talk to You Later and She's a Beauty, and other songs on those albums. And
well, that's actually one of my complaints about these two albums, is that Fee is not a great vocalist, and he's not an interesting enough singer to give generic music to him. He can't uphold generic music with his vocals.
Right.
The only way I can even listen to Complete Backward Principle or Outside Insight is just to pretend it's Toto. If those two albums were Toto albums, I'd be like, yeah, those are good albums.
Yeah, I have the advantage of coming in without prejudice from not listening to a lot of their back catalog and just listening to these albums and evaluating them on their own and for what they are, particularly the Completion Backward Principle, which I think is a really good record.
Yeah.
But it's of its era, it's of its sound, it's more mainstream for sure, but I like a lot of mainstream music. And it's more interesting than a lot of mainstream pop music from that era, rock music. Outside Inside just isn't. It's just too generic sounding, although I do appreciate the production and the sound quality is very good. It'll sound good on your nice stereo system, but it's just the songs are just not doing it for me. No. Other than She's a Beauty.
Except She's a Beauty, which is a great single. And
that's basically Lukather's song. So.
It's Luke's song, yeah. Which is also what kind of caused the band going forward they did splinter, and Fee went off and did a solo album in 84 with Foster and Lukather and all the session guys that flopped. And then they reconvened in 85 with Todd Rundgren and did Love Bomb, which was a bomb.
Yeah, a literal bomb.
Yes. And then that was it.
Anything redeeming on that album for you? Or it is a Rundgren production after all.
It is, but it doesn't have anything. Todd has a lot of really bad albums too. You have to remember that.
Which is the worst?
The worst Todd Rundgren album?
Yes.
Oh God, he's got albums starting from the late 80s on. There's so many of them that I don't even know what I would deem the worst. I mean, even going back to this era, like Oblivion and POV, those are Utopia albums, but those aren't good either. I think that Love Bomb is kind of like albums that Todd has too, that are just super mainstream and just boring. And they have a little bit of an R&B feel to them, but they're not schmaltzy like Foster stuff. They're just generic. They just have no qualities to them that stand out and could be anybody. And that's what Love Bomb is like. It doesn't really sound like the Tubes. It doesn't sound like any specific cohesive sound. It's just background music that's really boring. They did have one song, Piece by Piece, that they made a video for. It barely grazed the top 100, and the video is terrible. And that's a shame too, because the Tubes are one of the first bands to embrace video. They put out a video companion to the Complete Backward Principle, a whole video album. And just like Todd Rundgren embraced video early on, they were part of that too. So I do think the She's a Beauty video is good. And it's one of those that feels like a mini movie. I feel like they should have been huge during the MTV era because of how much they were into video and just their whole theatrical element. I don't even think they ever made another video after that one. There's no other songs on the album. They wanted to release Monkey Time as the next single. It has Martha Davis from the Motels singing on that song.
That's a fun song, but it's a cover. It's
a cover, but Martha's label wouldn't let them put it out because they thought it would compete with the Motels album that was out at the same time. So they did re-record it again with Michelle Gray, who became Todd Rundgren's wife. Released it with her, and they, did release it as a single, re-recorded it with her. But there's at least 2 songs on that album, No, Not Again and Glass House, that should have been the next single. Those are actually pretty good songs, and they're good pop songs, but they didn't, and then they were just kind of forgotten.
So in the end, it's another sad story of greed and artistic differences and personal wish fulfillment and the splintering of a once creative and cohesive group into different camps. And within a couple of years after their biggest hit, the Tubes were no more, sadly. But they would reunite and play more shows down the road.
Yeah, and you know what Fee's biggest claim to fame in Hollywood was? He was in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, like one of the 3 gods, with Martha Davis and Clarence Clemons.
There is another Gen X Touchstone movie that I've never watched.
Really?
Yes, there's a list. We should do the list sometime.
Yeah, we should.
So there you have it. We got 3 more songs on our 1983 playlist. We are closing in on completing the year 1983. Matt and Cheryl's Gen Excellent playlist. Our review of a lifetime of Gen X music starting in 1972, and we have not yet reached our peak. We're almost there to the years when Cheryl and I are both in high school. That's when we'll pick the most songs, and then we'll taper back down, and we'll end this thing when we get to...
Which is going to be kind of the worst year.
I know, but you know what? It's
going to be interesting.
It's a fun challenge.
That's true. That is true.
This is yet another show that illustrates really one of the great joys I get out of this project is discovering new things, new bands, or rediscovering old ones that you'd forgotten about or overlooked. And Cheryl, you've gotten a wealth of new fun music out of this project.
I know.
You were like, She's a Beauty. I don't know. It's all right.
Yeah.
Now you've got all this great new music that you've discovered.
Oh, it's so true. Yes, there's so many things I have discovered because of this podcast. And I'm actually really excited to see what we're going to find in those years because I know that there's hidden gems in there that are just waiting to be uncovered.
Yeah, for me, the discovery was the Completion Backward Principle album, in particular, the Killer Ballad. Don't want to wait. Go look that one up, folks. It was a top 40 hit. I do not remember hearing that on the radio or seeing it on MTV. I certainly remember Talk to You Later.
Yeah,
I don't remember Don't Want to Wait anymore.
It does sound slightly familiar to me, but not as much as Talk to You Later.
Don't want to wait anymore.
But I do think it's one of those songs that you would not know who sings it. You would not know it was the Tubes. Even if you knew the Tubes, you wouldn't recognize it because Bill Spooner sings lead.
Yeah.
It's kind of a lost hit from the 80s.
Go seek that one out. My other epiphany for 1983 so far, Lick It Up. Who knew that was such a great song?
Yes. Album. It's a good album too. But yes.
I can't get enough of those lately. So our last few shows coming up for 1983, we're going to talk power ballads soon, and I've got a couple of biggies that I'm going to put on the playlist. I've still got my album of the year coming. Also coming up, and Cheryl will be geared up for this, Prog of the 80s, specifically 1983, with an album that was really massive for both of us personally when it came out.
And that one was a contender for album of the year for me too.
Yeah.
The Yes album. I mean, not the Yes album, but 90125.
Yeah. The Yes album's my favorite Yes album.
Yeah.
90125 was the gateway into, basically was my gateway into progressive rock. And then Mike, of course, will have his album and Song of the Year, and will join us on our final episode of 1983. So that's all coming up in the next few weeks. Until then, thanks for joining us for another episode of Matt and Cheryl's An Excellent Playlist. I'm Matt.
I'm Cheryl.
Bye-bye, everybody.